Welcome to Empath Astrology. Today I want to talk to you a bit about Saturn and the stigmas of Saturn in mental health. My name is Shauna McGrath. I'm an astrologer and a marriage and family therapist trainee. I am a trainee. I like to be very clear that I am not licensed as a marriage and family therapist. I am going through my training. And so, as a part of this training to become a psychotherapist, I am seeing clients and I am getting supervision and being exposed to many other ideas and philosophies and thought processes around psychotherapy and mental health. And so I had an interesting conversation recently and around a stigma in mental health, and I wanted to approach this from an astrological view and sort of unpack some of the stigma that came up recently that I noticed and that I think relates not just to mental health but to any part of the helping healing field and how we look at how it is that we take care of ourselves. And I think this is so important because your mental health and your health in general, but we could say health in general, but I'm coming from a psychotherapeutic standpoint and an astrology standpoint. Your mental health really affects your entire life, and not just your entire life now, but the progression of your life and how you live your life. And so this felt really important to talk about. So the idea that I want to sort of walk around and talk around and talk into a bit is this idea that if you need therapy, if you need assistance, if you need help and healing, that means that there is something wrong, that you are dysfunctional. And so this came about because in one of my group supervisions recently, we were discussing if it was appropriate or not for a particular client that someone had, if it was appropriate for them to continue to be in therapy. And I was really surprised to hear several trainees express that if someone was functional, like if they were able to go to work, if they were able to eat and sleep, basically, then they did not need any assistance, that they did not need to be in therapy, that was something like, why are you coming to therapy if you're able to go to work and function? And I feel very differently. I feel that there's a variety of different reasons why someone would get therapy, or any kind of, like when I say therapy, it's also like, I think this relates to any helping healing. So whether that is getting body work or getting assistance, like from massage therapy to physical therapy to astrology consultations to nutritional support, like any kind of help and healing. Do you need to be like broken down and entirely dysfunctional in order to seek assistance? And I think no. I think that there's so much that can be done to proactively prevent you from breaking down, and not even that there's so much that can be done to enhance the quality of your life. That because someone is able to go to work and eat, that doesn't mean that they wouldn't benefit from some type of help healing, whether that is, again, like counseling or astrology or massage therapy or something like this. And I think that this idea that you have to be like broken down in order, like you know, not able to go to work and not able to eat and that kind of thing, that this stems from a stigma around mental health, a stigma around seeking help and seeking assistance, and this this relates astrologically to Saturn. And I realize I'm jumping around a little bit, but I hope you'll hang in there with me. This is a bit more of like a chatty, casual sort of conversation. So I'm bringing in Saturn because Saturn is associated with all of these topics in different ways. So the planets, the houses, the aspects, all of the symbols in astrology, there are many different symbols that come in. It's like Saturn is not just one thing. And Saturn can be like everything in astrology, it can be a symbol of things that we find very helpful and a symbol of things that we find very challenging, and there's this full spectrum. So Saturn is associated with judgment and with and this can be judgment in like discernment and really knowing what is appropriate, what is not for you, where to draw a boundary around something and where to be more open. But it also can show or symbolize being highly critical or judgmental in a way that is even shaming or saying like, oh, like this is bad and this is not right. And so this is, Saturn would be associated, it would be the symbol of a stigma where there's a judgment against something in a negative connotation. Saturn is also associated with strength and foundations and support. Saturn is associated with wisdom, with building strength over time, and with, it's also associated with, I'm pausing a bit because I want to say like it's seeking out people in situations that have more resources than you do that can support you. And so I'm pausing because in contrast, Jupiter is associated with teachers, and Jupiter is associated with teachers, counselors, professionals who are advisors. Jupiter is also associated with spirituality, with spiritual teachings and that sort of thing. And I want to differentiate between that and Saturn, which is about seeking out people and situations that have the resources and the wisdom from experience that you may not have. And so that's different than Jupiter, because Jupiter is like wisdom that is more philosophical, wisdom from like meditative experiences or reading texts or really thinking about things. That's more Jupiter, whereas Saturn is more about what you've learned from experience. And so I digress. So Saturn is this symbol of judgment, but also support and foundations. And so I'm bringing this up because in order to function like and have strong mental health, we need support. It's not something that we are we're not built as humans to function entirely independently. That's something that is emphasized a lot in Western culture, is that the independence is very prized. And this is very different from Eastern cultures, where it's actually seen as unhealthy to be too independent. That family, culture, community in the East, in Eastern cultures, is seen as more healthy and more desired. Now, I think that's changing a bit because of globalization, but this idea in Western cultures that we should be able to function entirely on our own without any assistance unless something is wrong. I think that this gets us into trouble because we're not built that way as human beings. We're social creatures, and we benefit from proactive support. And so I really wanted to talk about this too because I thought this was really interesting that this stigma against mental health support was coming from within the field, coming from someone who is training to be a counselor. And so to give you a bit more context, the the place where I am training at, the focus is on grief counseling. So counseling people who have lost a loved one and are grieving loss. And so a person who is grieving the loss of a parent or the loss of a spouse or the loss of a child or anything, but someone, very close to them, they may be able to go to work and, eat regularly, take care of themselves in a reasonable way. They can go through the day. Now, in my mind, that doesn't mean that that person should not receive counseling or support in some way, because that support, whether that is from one-on-one counseling or a support group or, even like if that person doesn't feel comfortable with counseling, if that's not really their thing, maybe they have supportive friends that they can talk to, or maybe they get body work done, or they do art therapy, whatever it is, that support is going to help them through the process of grief, which is a long and very I don't want to say it's like a spiral process. Some days are better than others. And some people, they can function and they can, do all the things and go through the day and put on a face that says, everything's okay. But that doesn't mean that they feel good on the inside. And I guess maybe good is not the right word, but there's a lot of pain that we can carry around and still function. And sometimes that is unavoidable. There's a lot of suffering that is a part of human existence, but much of it we can work with through receiving helping, healing support from people that are trained to help with that. So again, whether that is through counseling or through art therapy or music or dance or astrology or body work, like all of these things, we have so many resources at our disposal. And, I realized that that a person may not always have the financial means to receive these resources, but that's a whole other topic. What I'm talking about today is just this mindset of, when it is that you allow yourself to entertain the idea of receiving support, and, what does that look like for you? I have some notes here that I want to make sure I hit on a few different things. So that's actually, something that I wanted to pose, a question that I wanted to pose to you is, how do you know when you're like, oh yeah, like I really need some help with this. I really need some support today, or with this particular situation. Like, what is your sort of like guidepost for that? And I would encourage you to think about, like, does that bar have to be like, can it be more proactive and more kind than, oh, like my life, I need to be like falling apart? Because I think that's sort of like the way that we're programmed to think about it, is that we need to be like really falling apart in order to ask for help. And it doesn't have to be that way. Definitely not. Um, so the other thing that I wanted to say about Saturn in all of this is that so I think it's important to ask yourself this question, and this is something that you can contemplate or journal on, is that Saturn is associated with specificity. So it's associated with boundaries, drawing lines, it's about making things very specific. And so when we're more specific with what it is that our boundaries are, this helps us to function. It helps us to actually have a stronger foundation. So Saturn, again, is about foundations. It's about the structure that your life is based on. So what is it that are what are your boundaries for yourself? Like, where is it where you feel good, where you feel like, okay, this is okay if I have these things on my plate. If these kinds of situations start to happen, I know that it's not okay. And this is where I make changes. This is where I'm like, it's okay. The other thing about Saturn is that Saturn is about sacrifice as well. And like, that's the nature of boundaries sometimes, is that, sometimes in order to achieve something in the long term, Saturn, there's a sacrifice that needs to be made in the short term, Saturn. And, these are all judgment calls. And I bring up sacrifice because sometimes we think that we need to sacrifice more than we actually do. And that can look like sacrificing your well-being in order to put on a happy face, or in order to, try to look like, or try to achieve something all on your own. And again, I want to challenge that. I want to push back on that it doesn't need to be that way. Of course, sacrifice is important, but I think that it's also important that we do it in a conscious way, that that you're choosing. I think that's a big Saturn theme as well, is that you're making the choices that feel good for you, and that it's not just something that's being done to you. I think that's when we feel overwhelmed with Saturn, and I notice this in my client work. When people have a Saturn transit, sometimes it can feel like there are no options, and there can kind of be like a helpless feeling, and that feels very heavy. When you feel like you don't have a choice and the situation is not something that you want, it can feel overwhelming. It can make you feel like helpless. And so in those kinds of situations, what we do is we work with Saturn to see where there is power, where there is autonomy, and where you have a choice. That is sort of like the way to dig out of that heaviness of Saturn that we can feel when we have a Saturn transit, or if you have Saturn as a strong energy in your birth chart. Sometimes that's something that can just come in routinely through the life. And so for you out there that have Saturn in a strong placement in your birth chart, that's going to be something that you can work with throughout your life to find where you have choice, where you have power, and where you have autonomy. And sometimes it helps to really pull back and look at the big picture. And again, this is where it helps to have someone that is an unbiased party, like a counselor or a coach, or even a friend that is able to be unbiased with you, as unbiased as possible. It helps us to pull back and to look at, okay, where have we assumed that things need to be the way that they are, and where can we question this is very helpful with Saturn transits. Again, it's difficult because the nature of Saturn is to be, it does have like a heaviness to it. And uh, when we're talking about Saturn from a mental health perspective, it tends to be associated with feelings of depression or overwhelm, or feeling like there's a lot of responsibility. So like all of those have more of like a heavy feel to them. So the more that we can create a feeling of choice, that helps to lighten a feeling of choice, and a feeling again of support and reaching out and um, finding resources, asking for help. And I think a lot of times there are more resources that are available than we realize. Again, like I want to acknowledge that sometimes financial strain can make things really difficult. It can kind of exacerbate the issue. But that being said, there's always something. There's always something that can be done, and sometimes that's just asking the questions. So I'm curious, what your thoughts are. If you have experienced stigma around mental health, if this is something, how do you work with when you are having a challenging situation, and how do you take care of yourself? How do you reach out for help? Is that something that's difficult for you? Leave a comment and let me know. And it's nice to be able to share with each other, so maybe your comment can help someone. And if there is something where you need support and you would like a little extra help, I offer astrology consultations and would love to work with you and provide that support or provide any resources that I am able to. So I will leave you with that today. I am wishing you a wonderful weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.